the actual curriculum for entrepreneurship? Or is it the way that we teach the entrepreneurship that determines success? So if you have students doing practical work, maybe doing a startup and living through that process versus a textbook.
I think a real challenge wherever you are in the world is how you get particularly young, bright people to recognise they can access a university.
Now I see there's a recognition across universities in Pakistan, and some of the institutions have actually created incubators, accelerators, yes.
When we talk about entrepreneurialism, a lot of people wrongly assume that this entrepreneurialism necessarily means that you're going to set up a business. But I'll tell you what's missing. There's a danger that we're going to give those kids this impression that you're going to succeed, come what may.
Welcome everybody, and let me start the session. If everybody could just do a quick introduction of yourselves and your institutions and organizations.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mark Garrett. I'm Director of External Affairs at the University of Bradford. We're a mid-sized university in the north of England, but we specialise in, we're a technology university, and we specialise in health, engineering, informatics, and we have one of only 57 business schools in the world that are triple accredited.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Awais Rauf. I'm from University of Lahore. I'm the Chairman Board of Governors. We are a large-sized private sector University of Pakistan with more than 40 different schools and departments. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Amjad Parvez. I'm a serial entrepreneur, but lately, thanks to Khurram and his team, I'm now the chairman of Jumpstart Pakistan. My passion and vision is to create the ecosystem of enterprise in Pakistan and empower the youth and businesses to become lean, mean, and globally competitive, so Pakistan can have the global market share that it deserves in order to give its population the prosperity and in the employment that it needs.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to start off the discussions right now by just a couple of opening questions, because of course academia and innovation seems like a no-brainer. Everybody understands that academia should be generating innovation, but we don't necessarily see that happening. We see hubs of innovation happening, we see research happening, but not all of it gets to commercialization or commercial entity. So where do we start? Where do we start when it comes to academia and innovation?
Well, obviously I'm talking from the position of universities in the UK, but I mean I come from a background of business, and when I first came into academia 10 years ago, that was a question I asked myself. And what we do at Bradford is we create innovation hubs where we encourage businesses to come and work with us to utilise the academic expertise we have, and then we work in collaboration at actually setting up businesses. So in a sense we have a number of examples where we've done that and they've gone to market and they've been incredibly successful. But I think a real challenge wherever you are in the world is how you get particularly young, bright people to recognise they can access a university, and that's the real big challenge for me, because universities can be big scary places for young people.
Thank you, Mark. I think this is a big question and it's a big challenge for Pakistani universities. We have, and it's an estimate guess, about 20 to 25% of our students have that enterprise thing in them. They want to become job creators. They want to create new businesses. There are two problems we face at our institutions, and I think we're responsible for not being able to change that. Number one is that while our students have those ideas, we're not able to give them the right set of skills and knowledge to create businesses. And the other one is not to provide them the right space. They need a bit of funding initially, obviously. All of that, now I see there is a recognition across universities in Pakistan. And some of the institutions have actually created incubators, accelerators, yes, including our own university. The National Incubation Center at LUMS is doing a fantastic job. So I think we have this realization, and things are changing. We need to give the right skill set to our students who are entrepreneurs, who have ideas, and provide them the space. So these 20 to 25% kids, if they can start getting both these things, I think we'll move towards creating new businesses from within the institutions. Obviously, I know you have examples of Cambridge creating so many great businesses, creating billions of dollars of equity. We need to replicate those things in our universities in Pakistan. The model can be a bit different, but I think the approach would be very similar.
I'm just going to put an add-on question. If you look at all of the incubators and the university incubators right now, we see a lot of the student teams. I work with a lot of the student teams where they're very good ideas, but the maturity to actually take that business and create an investable business, whether it's Series A, Series B, level is missing. And this has been a constant feedback over and over again. What role does the faculty play in terms of innovation hubs? Should we have faculty student teams? Should there be faculty student companies? Or is that a place where faculty could perhaps take advantage of students?
Thank you for the question. I'm not an academic, although I've worked with universities for the last 25 years. I'm an entrepreneur. So I look to universities for innovation, creativity, and out-of-the-box thinking. But unfortunately, what is happening right now, everybody seems to be gravitating to technology, and I don't have anything against that. But the fundamental thing, I think, that where there needs to be innovation, and that might be so simplistic, you'd think it'd be, you know, like the goodies used to say, you know, it's bleeding obvious, but it's not happening, which is, as an employer, I'm getting young people who've got MBAs, MScs, but when they come for a job, they really can't even hold a conversation. Secondly, you know, they need stuff to be prescriptive. In today's world, I need people, because the competition that I'm facing, I need people who are creative. When we talk about entrepreneurialism, a lot of people wrongly assume that this entrepreneurialism necessarily means that you're going to set up a business. No, I need entrepreneurialism within an organization, so every section of that company and every person in that organization, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, whether it's whatever it is, they're actually creative, and that creativity is focused innovatively. Now when we do that, and I think that's where universities, you know, are beginning to get that, but listening to industry and coming together and creating an industrial policy that actually grows the individual as a holistic person in the 21st century, but that then gives them a job that actually pays the bills and gives them room to self-actualize by the income they have. That is something that we need to actually, you know, really discuss in the current
I think I'd like to speak to the two sort of university representatives here. So how do we teach? I mean, what Amjad Saab is saying is that, you know, we need this entrepreneurial mindset. And whether it's a business or whether it's in a job, that entrepreneurial mindset is very important.
I think the biggest problem we face is the curriculum and bit of regulatory environment we have in Pakistan. When we as universities are told by the regulatory bodies that we need to follow a confined kind of a curriculum across the country, which is same, and there's no innovation we can do, that is the biggest problem we have right now. Coming back to the point of maturity, I think it's not the faculty that can give students maturity vis-a-vis doing businesses or being entrepreneurs or being creative only. It is ultimately the mentors who come from the business environment, because they have seen the downsides of doing businesses. So the maturity comes when our students, the new young entrepreneurs, interact with the mentors from the business and the industry. They are the ones who are able to inculcate maturity into the students. I think being creative is very important, whether you are an entrepreneur and you're creating businesses, or you're just doing a good job in a vibrant environment. So I totally agree, and I think we as universities in Pakistan, we need to innovate our curriculums. We need to innovate even how we deliver the content, and faculty training is obviously very important for that.
So my job is to start the fire here, so apologies in advance for my questions. So is creating an entrepreneurial mindset a part of the curriculum, or is it about the delivery of the curriculum?
I think it's both. I think.
Let me come back to another point that we really need to discuss, and then I'll answer your question.
Could you put your mic up?
I've actually visited incubation centers across the globe and here in Pakistan. And as an entrepreneur, when I walk into them, I see clean, sanitized, beautiful places with modern equipment, guys playing ping pong with bean bags and stuff like that. And yes, we need to create that environment where people can work and play. But I'll tell you what's missing. There's a danger that we're going to give those kids this impression that you're going to succeed, come what may. But this is not the reality. When you start as an entrepreneur, you're going to have 1,000 cuts on your back and on your face, right? If you don't fall in love with the job that you're doing, the idea that you've got, right? And if you've been brought up in that cuddly little environment that you've created, the first, horrible step that you face, you're just going to give up, right? So I think that's something that universities need to take away. And when they create these incubation centers, or they create the learning environment of entrepreneurialism, right? They need to be really, really be cognizant of this, that failure has to be part of the learning process. Coming on to your second point, can entrepreneurialism be taught? I certainly think it can, but there are some people who are more entrepreneurial naturally, but that is life. But if we can move somebody from point 1 to point 5 by teaching them, they're 5 points better rather than leaving at point 1. So I think this debate about is entrepreneurial nature or nurture, I think it's both, and we've got to do it. And whatever somebody takes out of it, if it moves them up a ladder or a notch, well then, let's do it.
So actually, the question was not whether entrepreneurship can be taught. The question was, is it the curriculum, the actual curriculum for entrepreneurship, or is it the way that we teach the entrepreneurship that determines success? So if you have students doing practical work, maybe doing a startup and living through that process, versus a textbook.
I wouldn't even use the word teaching, and I wouldn't even have lecturers actually teaching this subject. So you need people who are entrepreneurs. You could set the curriculum outline, but what you said earlier on about prescriptive, it needs to be totally flexible, because you're in life, you face situations and you can't be prescriptive. The modality needs to be set out. For example, how do you test an idea whether it's effective in a particular, so what do you go through? Is it fit for purpose? What's its uniqueness, right? Have you done your customer profiling? What's your marketing? What's your unique proposition? That I think you can teach. But the way you enter the market, the style that you have, the personality, I don't think you can teach that.
So going back to industry and academia sort of as the hubs for innovation, who starts? Does academia kind of do the research and then take it to industry? Or should industry be coming to the university? It's the chicken or the egg almost. Who goes first? Maybe Mark, you'd like to share some experience from Bradford?
Well, to be honest, it can be both, in my experience. I just want to finish on the final point, and I'll come back to your point. One of the things I think is missing, I see this in 30 years of working in business, is people haven't built resilience. Yeah? And one of the things we have to do is the question I always ask in interviews: how do you build resilience in yourself for when things go wrong? And that's about environment and culture just as much as teaching and curriculum. And that's the thing we do. And the other point about faculty, by the way, isn't a faculty, it's cross-faculty. We have just moved our business school from a beautiful building that looks like Hogwarts in the centre of Bradford, and we're moving it to the centre of the university because management discipline is critical to the success of every other faculty, so it's not just one faculty. But to your second point, it's both. But the challenges I think with universities, sometimes even businesses don't know how to really come with their idea and come with it in a way that academia can actually help it. I think academia in some kind of environment where it's miles from society is wrong too. Research for research's sake is wrong. In the UK now, all research has to have impact by definition. We have this thing called REF, and so you can't have academia coming up with things out of touch from reality.
So I'd like to share some.
Can I say
Yeah,
something?
please.
Actually, if you look at the context, Pakistani context, research actually kick-started about 10 years ago, and it was not to have an impact on the society or anything. It was more for the sake of promotion and the sake of rankings and all. People were only promoted once they would have enough impact factor research publications every year. So impact on the society per se did not remain the main purpose of doing it. Should it be the industry? I don't think the industry realizes the benefits they can get out of this collaboration. So to me, it looks right now in our context, the universities have to take this initiative today. And if they're able to help and assist the industry in modernizing themselves and creating more efficiency, yes, in some decades or years, the industry would also become very proactive. But today it has to be the universities, as I see, looking at the environment.
I agree to some extent with what you're saying, but I think what you've got to look at is where industry is moving. In order for a firm to survive, you cannot now rely on a timeline which is too long, because things are changing so quickly. Before, what used to happen is you used to wait for research and development to happen. Industry would adopt it. The early adopters would win because the cost of adopting would be so much, but they realized what the adoption cost, what the returns were. But you see, that gap, because of the pace at what the competition that businesses face, is so close, and it's getting closer. In my opinion, as a businessman, looking at the globe and where this is going, the universities and industry, and particularly leading edge technology, AI, and with all this robotics and stuff that is coming, we have to work together in tandem and at the same pace. So as soon as something is researched and we've got something, it has to go to market. Otherwise, you will not have the competitive edge. So this argument, right, this discussion we should have, but the implementation needs to happen yesterday.
So just continuing this topic and adding a little bit more fuel to the fire, we have now, in the world of technology, of course, all of this cross-sector work that is happening. So if you take a sector like agriculture, even agriculture has AI, even agriculture has robotics. And of course, these have traditionally been silos. So you have a University of Agriculture and you have a University of Technology. They're both doing their independent research, but the commercialization opportunity is usually at the cross-sector of the two. How do we bring these sectors together? And I think that's a global question, not just for Pakistan.
It is, but it's the point I made earlier on about how we're now effectively merging disciplines within our faculties to work actually together. So the engineers we're not just training engineers to be engineers now. We're training engineers to also be entrepreneurs, and I think that's really important. I mean, just as a bit of a sales pitch, we think we're just about to launch the world's first applied artificial intelligence undergraduate degree. And the word applied is the important thing, because everywhere we've been the last few years, everyone talks about the challenges organisations face around artificial intelligence. It's not about the coding. It's about how the organisation responds. So it's a little example of how we're trying to partly respond to the question you're asking, which is how do you take a challenge like artificial intelligence and get people trained to think about how organisations generally respond to it?
I think if we want to bring this alignment, and it's got to be alignment, then with anything, you always need the vision and the mission. In the past, industry has looked to maximize profit. That's been the mantra of survival. You make profit, you reinvest, and you grow your market share, and you beat your competitors. And that was because there were very few developed countries, particularly in the West. But what technology has done, almost at an individual level, a young person in a room with a mobile application or a computer is the biggest threat to the multinationals, because they're more agile, they're more disruptive. And I think the paradigm that we've got to move to, and this is going to be the difficult part, is where innovators and disruptors and industry have got to have a vision of solving global problems. That's where we've got to come together, because now China says we're equal to you, you're not going to exploit our resources and then sell them back at a premium. We want to do the same thing. So this kind of one-tier economy has gone. We can't be adversarial anymore. So if that is gone, the quicker we realize that we've got to collaborate. Hence, Mark being here. We invited people from 30 countries across the globe, because we realize if we're just going to compete with each other and kill each other for that profit, then the whole planet is going to go. So bringing that philosophy of collaboration and visioning global problems, will that bring the fusion of profit and solving global problems together? And that's when real collaboration and entrepreneurship kicks in, when you do big things.
I think there's a very fundamental why we as University of Lahore obviously became partners with this initiative and been working with Khurram, is that we in Pakistan, the higher education sector, we have a serious problem of creating a vision for this industry for the next some years. We are simply following what was being given to us decades ago, even curriculums, the faculty, the style of research and everything. So I realized that people come to us and say, these are the graduates you've produced, they're good for the industry probably locally, but once you send them abroad, they fail miserably. So I think we have a fundamental problem right now as universities in Pakistan. We're doing okay, it's a huge country, 220 million people, majority of them young, so universities have huge enrollments, but we are not preparing our students, graduates for the industry of today even, what to talk of the future. I think it's an opportunity for us, and I want us to remain relevant for the future especially, that we need to design ourselves afresh. We need to design new curriculums, train our students and even faculty for the future. So to me, I feel a bit irrelevant when I see people, universities talking about degrees in AI and how Chinese are completely converting agriculture sector, and we in Pakistan are still teaching old techniques and methods. How our technology institutes are not abreast with the latest technologies itself. So I see this as an opportunity for me, one university in this country, that how can we innovate ourselves first before we start creating innovators and job creators who can do dynamic things in the market locally and internationally.
Just picking up on that discussion, I think universities as hubs of innovation, connecting to industries, collaborating, cross-sector collaborations, and sort of promoting that. But what about innovation for the university? What is the future of the university? Because there's been a lot of talk on the global education platforms that the university in 15 years might be obsolete. And I don't hear in Pakistan any conversations on this subject. It's just a given that we're going to have a university, it's going to be a physical building. But how does that work? What does the university look like in 30 years, 40 years?
It's a really big question. I mean, if my Vice Chancellor would hear, he would completely disagree with the contention you've just raised, on the basis that we still have to have people engage with people. They'll not just. I mean, I know we're talking about having robots, presenting in various countries. We were talking about it earlier on. So there will still be a need. I think we believe there'll be a need for a more blended approach. Just moving straight to doing things online. I mean, people do things online, but we don't believe it's going to be completely scrapped. There will still be some form of bricks and mortar. The interesting thing in the UK, there was a big move a few years ago to move to two-year degrees. They haven't taken off, and the reason they haven't taken off is because just getting people to cram in a short period of time, it's not. The market hasn't asked for it. And actually it's not taken off, so we believe there'll still be a need for that. Now, some of it might be done through using technology and working remotely, but it will certainly be the need to collaborate, as Amjad has said.
So some of the discussions, the global discussions, have been that the incubator model might actually be the new university, where there are students focused on solving some of these large problems, working in multi-sectorial teams with faculty that is perhaps guiding all of that. Is that something that sounds like we could be going in that direction?
Well, just one point on ours. Pretty much all our move now is to move to team-based learning. So we're building that into the curriculum.
Team-based learning.
Team-based learning. Now that can be done across the world. I mean, you can have team-based collaborative working in any space.
To me, the fundamental question is, how do we define a university? Is it just that a place, virtual or physical, where people come and learn something, they cram information or get a set of skills only? To me, it's a lot more about that experience. And sometimes interacting with the professor, you get a lot more than spending probably 60 hours learning through a book. So I think that experience, and that's very much physical, it's hands-on. The university may not be disrupted as much as the other industries, the disruption they are facing. So I think we'll probably survive in this form longer than many other industries because of the experience and interaction. You meet a Nobel laureate, a professor, just by being in the presence of such an individual. So much interaction takes place at subliminal level even. So I think universities probably will survive. I'm not a technology wizard, so I don't know, sir. So it looks, but the fact that in Pakistan we still need to move so much into the future, even to compete with our international competition, that we still have a lot more years probably to survive. But I request that we need to jumpstart, and we as universities need to, because I know about this team-based learning, it's taking over the world right now. And yes, this is the future. It is the future. So will we become large-size incubators? I'm not sure, not as yet maybe. Maybe that is the future, but only if this idea is resilient enough and it survives, we'll get to know.
I think when we define university, we should define it from the person who's actually paying for the education and what do they want from it. So in that discussion, we really need to understand the motivation of the students. And I interact with a lot of young people across the globe, and particularly in the UK. And one of the key things that actually comes through, yes, they come to do a particular degree or whatever they're doing in terms of academia to get a job, but you know what? They're looking for experiences to become a holistic person, right? Maybe they find a life partner through the university life. They interact with people from overseas. In a globalized world, I think universities need to manage that more professionally and more robustly. We don't actually see the value of that. Bradford is beginning to do that, where we're interacting when overseas students comes we take them to City Hall, they make the local leaders, so they understand. So when they come back, when they graduate, when they become captains of industry, and they've got a, a 2 billion project, they will consider Bradford or some other city. So I think when you define university, please don't define it just as where you get a degree, right? It's a much bigger social interaction and globalized interaction in today's world. So when you do that, I think universities should stay and should prosper.
They should stay and they should prosper, but in a redefined way. I think that's what I'm hearing everybody. So the university model is going to change, not necessarily just a degree, but experiences, a lot more experiences. As a hub of innovation, it seems that it's, the industry and the academia on both sides sort of coming towards each other, but also cross collaborations, cross-sectoral collaborations within the university also, I think, have become important. A last question, a difficult one, and I ask myself this all the time. As people in a slightly more senior generation, I'll try to put this as nicely as possible.
You and Jen.
So, when we look at this new world, are we actually the right people to even have this discussion? Do we understand these new paradigms enough? All of the leadership, everywhere you go, is of a certain generation. We haven't grown up with all of this. When I went to university, there was no mobile phone. Forget about anything else. Do we understand these paradigms enough to actually talk about this innovation and to guide this innovation?
Well, again, on a practical level at the University of Bradford, so every one of our structures, from committees through to decision-making groups, involve students. We have students on all our committees. So when we're looking at some of the decisions we make, we involve them. And we've just actually carried out a massive piece of research on Generation Z. Well, if there's any Americans in the room, apparently it's called Generation Z. And they've given us some fantastic insights about what they want from a university. And the conversation we just had, and we've just created a new brand position around it, it's called This is Bradford, This is Education. Not this is higher education, this is education in its widest sense. And the feedback from Generation Z is they want that whole experience. And actually, they're not going to listen to me as a marketing guy, they want to listen to their peers. And so your contention is absolutely right, in my humble opinion.
And can we, how does this play out in Pakistan? Because of course we have a hierarchical society.
I think our society is changing, obviously, probably not at that pace. Many of the decisions that our students take still are taken by their parents. That's how it works. The economic model is such that since it has to be a financial decision also, so obviously parents have an influence. But if I say that we as universities are not going to experience any change, that's not a fact. So we know we have to change. And students being one of the largest stakeholders, yes, we need to get feedback from them. But still we have not reached a place and time where the entire process will be driven by students only, as I experience. It's driven by, because what is changing is probably not the set of knowledge or whatever, it's the technology that has actually taken the entire world into that pace. So yes, we seek guidance from our students as well, from the next generation, but still most of the decisions somehow are taken by relatively older generations, in Pakistani context, I would say.
Do any of you use Slack?
Yes, we do.
You're using Slack. Are you using Slack?
No, I do not.
Do you know what it is?
No.
Okay. Do you use Slack? Slack. Slack. Okay. So somebody came to me, a student, and said, "Ma'am, why aren't you on Slack?" I, of course, had never heard of it. I had no idea what Slack was. Went, looked at it, and it's a whole community with conversations and topics and all kinds of stuff. Companies have Slack channels. Topics are happening. We don't even know about it. How can we guide our students And this is a very honest question we have to all ask ourselves. How can we guide our students when we don't even know the world they live in?
I think what you say is pertinent, and we've got to be cognizant of the trends, but I think we forget at our peril if we think that universities are a special case. At the end of the day, they are businesses, and any business that needs to survive needs to know what its value proposition is. And you know, unfortunately, some of the vice chancellors don't even know what a value proposition is, let alone what a Slack is, right? So I think the first job they've got to do is go on a startup, come here at Jumpstart and explain to us what the value proposition of their university is. So let's begin there rather than talking about it. The minute you understand what your value proposition is, how it's created, and how it's captured and how it's delivered in the market, then by definition, you need to understand your customer profile and what their psychological, psychometric needs are, not just their education needs. So in that scenario of understanding your customer, your Slacks come in, your various, and this is a good example of what Bradford is doing. And I keep saying that because I'm on the Senate of the university. I understand, you know, a lot of young people interact with me. So I take on board totally what you're saying. But you see, institutions need to invest and they need a return on capital. And that decision is made by investors, right? And when youngsters, what are youngsters interested in? They need a degree that's fit for purpose, their skills are for purpose, they can have a job so they can live a better standard of life. What they do with Slack and Twitter and that, you know, that's okay, our business, but you know, that's what they do in their life. We've got to give fit for purpose education that allows them to actually live a life that's wholesome.
But there's a simple answer. I mean, I get all my technology advice from my 12-year-old boy at the weekends. That's how I find out about Slack.
Exactly, me too. I'd just like to request very quick closing comments to each of the panelists. Last thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, I'm going to respond to that point. Absolutely right. I think it's finding the mechanisms by which we can hear voices of youth, but we still have to have structures and governance that make a university work. You're absolutely right. And I was probably being a little bit flippant about my son, but it's finding those nuggets that can come out, but allow them to flourish. And it's not old people like me stopping creativity, because we can do that. That's the point.
At the end, I would like us to visit back the whole idea of today's event, and why we as one of the universities are participating is because we realize that for our graduates and alumni to embrace innovation, creativity, to be able to create businesses and us as institutions able to assist them is very fundamental for us in Pakistan, especially with this number of youth coming. And I believe that, yes, lovely if we can become large-size incubators, but how do you convert the conventional university style to such an institution? I don't know. I mean, I don't have any experience that has gone around anywhere in the world that has actually achieved it. So it's a lot of talk right now. People think that we should do this and that, but how to get to that? Like every individual is still infused in what is the future of technology in the world, we as universities obviously are still looking for answers in order to understand which direction we should take.
So one of the reasons why I agreed to be on this panel when they asked me to, and I said, I'm not an academic, why do you want me here? And they said, we just want your thoughts. And I think the reason also why, when Khurram very kindly asked me to chair Jumpstart, was this whole discussion that we've had about how industry, how students, our talent pool, and the universities come together to create the ecosystem of enterprise. Unless and until we get this right, and because Jumpstart is purely about Pakistan and how we lift this nation, that is my focus. And when somebody said to me, this hall wasn't filled, and I said to them, do you understand the concept of diffusion of innovation? And they kind of looked at me, you know, what you're saying. The people that are in this room are early adopters. They understand the vision. They understand the mission. Now, in the first phase of this adoption of ecosystem of enterprise is going to be difficult, it's going to be painful. But I passionately believe that at the end of the day, we will lift Pakistan because it's the right thing to do and it's the right methods to adopt.
Thank you very much for this wonderful panel, for the wonderful thoughts and sharing. I, for one, am very optimistic that this Jumpstart and Lift conference is going to be the first of many years of hard work, and that it will yield results, inshallah.
And
Thank
you're
you.
all going to stay the journey with us, whether you like it or not. Thank you.
Mic on. Thank you all the panelists. I would like to kindly stay on the stage
and receive token of appreciation from Mr. Amjad Bashir, Member of European Parliament.